Hello, everyone. Today we have an enormously interesting interview with the Assistant Director of the Helen Hardin Honors College, University of Memphis, Tennessee, United States, twice Fulbright Scholarship participant in Ukraine and in Japan, a friend of mine, a guy with a good sense of humor, Jonathan Holland. But actually, he's not from Holland. He's from the United States. And today we'll talk about Fulbright Scholarship, his experience, Ukrainian, American, and Japanese cultures, their peculiarities and differences. Hey, Jonathan, long time no see. How is life, buddy?
I'm good. I'm sheltering in place here, working from home, but it's good to see you.
Okay, telecommuting, teleworking. Do you use such words nowadays?
Working from home or virtual work, or I don't know.
Working remotely, telecommuting. Because probably there's new words in English. Yeah. Okay. So the first question for you, could you tell us a bit about the Fulbright Scholarship, and what kind of people can apply for this?
Sure. Yeah. This is the 75th anniversary of the Fulbright program. It was created right after the Second World War. It was introduced by Senator Fulbright. He was a senator in the United States legislature, and it's the flagship exchange program. It's the one of the top, most prestigious exchange programs in the world. And the first Fulbright program was in Japan, like I said, right after the Second World War. And the purpose of it is for people to travel to different countries from the United States to other places around the world, and for people from other places around the world to come to the United States and engage in some sort of educational activity, such as teaching or study or research. And the main goal around Fulbright is to facilitate like mutual understanding between different peoples around the world, so that you can learn about each other and understand each other, and to prevent future wars. So, like, again, it was right after World War II. So the Senator Fulbright and the U.S. Senate wanted to figure out ways to prevent this catastrophe from happening again, destruction and death. And one way they wanted to do this is through the Fulbright program, where they could send students and professors and teachers and professionals abroad and come to the United States and learn about each other. And the theory is, if the more you understand and know of peoples, the less that you fear them, and you won't have animosity and war. So that was the overarching goal of the Fulbright program. Now, you asked who can apply to the program. Mm-hmm. It's open. There's different types of Fulbright programs. In the United States, students who are about to graduate or in a graduate program, they're trying to earn their master's or PhD, they can apply to go to Ukraine and teach or do a research project. Professors in the United States, this is what they call the Fulbright Scholar Program. Professors can apply, and then they go abroad to a country and work on research and or teach English. And also there's like other kind of subset programs, like the one I did in Japan that you mentioned was through the Scholar Program, and that was called the International Education Administrators Seminar. And it was a 2-week seminar where me and a group of other professionals working at universities in America who work with international students and send American students abroad to learn for a period of time. But we went there to learn about Japan's higher education system and their culture and other aspects of Japan. And then what I did in Ukraine was the ETA program. It was the English Teaching Assistantship program, where I applied as a graduate student, and I went to Ukraine for a year to teach English and about America. And then it's a two-way street. So people from around the world can apply and come to the United States, including Ukraine. So you can apply if you're a fourth or fifth year university student and you want to come to America to earn a master's degree, a graduate degree, or you could apply to do that. And also, if you are a professor or a scholar, you can apply to come to the United States to either teach Ukrainian, or to teach about your field, your specific field, whatever that may be, from a Ukrainian perspective, and do research too. You can apply and come to the United States to do research. And typically, most of your Fulbright programs are going to be at least 1 year, one academic year. But there are those special cases where, like the one I did in Japan, was only a few weeks. And there are programs like that where you can apply if you're in Ukraine and come to the United States for maybe a shorter period of time, like a scholar exchange program, where you come maybe for a month or less, or maybe even a couple of months, and learn about American higher education and like teaching and research techniques here that professors and faculty use here in the United States.
So basically, there are two ways how to go to the United States for a scholar. There are two, as far as I know, there is a faculty development program, like it's the Fulbright program, and the Fulbright Scholar program. It's for maybe doctors of science, for PhD, for doctorates. Yes. I see.
Yeah, and this could be in any field. So it can be anything from art, business, medicine, science, history. So again, a lot of these are open to like any kind. And I didn't mention young professionals. So if you are if you finish your university and you're working as a professional, you could also apply. There's programs for professionals to come to through Fulbright to the United States.
Okay, so why did you decide to apply for this Fulbright scholarship? Did you want to visit Ukraine and Japan so much, or it was just all about a random choice that you have to go to Ukraine? Here, Jonathan, you go to Ukraine, and you should go to Ukraine.
Yeah, so I applied. The main reason I applied, I wanted to work. My goal was to work in international education, and so when I applied for my first Fulbright to Ukraine, my goal was to get experience working abroad and working and becoming familiar with other international universities, and to establish contacts with like people like you and other colleagues, and to get to know the students as well, and just again to get that experience in international education. Funny enough, though, I didn't actually apply to Ukraine. I actually applied to Poland, and
I suspected that.
I wasn't terribly familiar. I was familiar with the Soviet Union. I have an interest in history. I studied history as a university student, and I was familiar with the history of the Cold War, and from that perspective. And I had traveled a lot in Central and Eastern Europe. I had visited Poland, Czech Republic, and some other places near Ukraine, Hungary, but I had never visited and knew a lot about Ukraine. But I applied to Poland, and the Fulbright Commission asked me to go to Ukraine. And it was actually, Fulbright has been in Ukraine for a long time, but it was the first English teaching assistantship cohort to Ukraine. And actually, they didn't even have applications open for that program to go to Ukraine, but they decided, and I think they found some funding or something, and they asked some people who applied to some nearby places to go to Ukraine instead. and I was happy to accept. I am glad that I'd gone to Ukraine. I'm glad that it worked out that way because I was able to visit Ukraine and learn about a place that I had never visited and learn more about the history and things like that.
Because you were able to see me, of course, to meet me. Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
We wouldn't be having this conversation. And
what did you know about Ukraine before you came here? Like frankly speaking, like honestly, what did you know about Ukraine before coming here?
I knew it was part of the Soviet Union and that it was independent, and that's almost about it. I mean, I knew. I didn't know a lot of the specific details to or history and culture of Ukraine. I just knew it in the Cold War context that it was part of the Soviet Union and that it had gone independent. And I knew about the was it the Orange Revolution back in the early 2000s. I was fairly familiar with that, and that one of your former president had been poisoned. I knew about that. That was covered here in the United States.
Were you afraid to come to Ukraine?
No, not at all. No.
Okay.
I think, I mean, I had been a fairly experienced traveler before I came. So I think the more you travel, the less you fear it. So, yeah.
So you said that the Fulbright Scholarship met your expectations, right?
Oh yeah, it's definitely a life-changing experience for me. It definitely led, I think, to more opportunities for my career when I returned to the United States, and it was just such a enriching experience traveling around Ukraine and meeting people like you and my students and the colleagues all around Western Ukraine and Kiev, and I got a chance to travel to Crimea too before it was annexed by Russia.
Yes, I remember that you visited the Crimea before it was annexed by Russia, and I saw different photos that you visited probably like Yalta or like those big cities, Eupatoria. Yes.
Yeah, Yalta was great. Sevastopol was interesting.
Bakhchisarai, probably you visited Bakhchisarai.
Bakhchisarai was very interesting. The Tatar yeah, that was great. That was very interesting, and I actually was wanting to bring a group of students before. I thought Crimea would be a great place to bring students from America, and the Ivano-Frankivsk Western Ukraine. I also thought was going to be a great place to bring students from the United States. Unfortunately, when I was in a study abroad office, the war broke out in the East and in Crimea. So my superiors, we couldn't bring students because there was some safety concerns because of that. And obviously we could not even actually travel to Crimea, like the travel had been cut off. But
it would be funny if you just come with the students in 2014, for example, yes, like that center, and the students would be shocked probably by that because it was unbelievable what was happening. Actually, only one soldier died at that time, but it was just they say that it was peacefully annexed. But that is going on in Donetsk, in Donbass. It's unbelievable. So it's already
terrible. It's awful.
And nowadays it's a very tense situation, I would say. You never know what will happen. I hope everything is all right.
Yeah, for sure.
So you said that your responsibilities in Ukraine were that you were a language assistant. What about your responsibilities in Japan? What did you do?
So in Japan, that was a fairly different experience. So myself and about 14 other professionals who worked in international education, some professors, some administrators, we did a 2-week seminar. So it was planned by the U.S. Embassy and the Fulbright Commission in Japan. And there we traveled around. We traveled to Tokyo, Hiroshima, and Kyoto, and visited with different universities and professionals and colleagues and faculty members. We visited with the Ministry of Education there, so that was interesting. And we visited a company, like the largest human resources company in Japan. So we could learn about, what does a Japanese student, how does that process work where they leave university, they graduate, and then how do they enter the workforce, in Japan, and how that worked. And then we also visited, historical sites and to learn about the Japanese culture and history. So yeah, that was great. And I went to Japan. I did apply to Japan, and at the University of Memphis, where I work now, we have a lot of exchange students from Japan who come, and a lot of students who are from Memphis and around this area. They're very interested in Japanese culture, and we send them to Japan. So I went to so I can better advise them, both the Japanese students coming to America and the American students going to Japan, so I could, have a better idea of like what to expect and give good advice to them on their experience.
Mm-hmm. So did all this Fulbright scholarships play some role in your career growth in terms of education?
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of the biggest contributors to my career path. Fulbright is a nice thing to have on your resume when you're applying in jobs in higher education. I'm an administrator in higher education at a university, so it's a very prestigious, and then especially going into international education when I returned, it was very, very important, and very much gave me like a perspective, having lived abroad, and had some understanding of how universities work abroad, and things like that. And I'm also, go ahead.
Do a lot of Americans apply for the Fulbright scholarship? So is it difficult to win this program in the United States?
It is it is very difficult. It's competitive. I'll put it that way. I'm on the committee for Fulbright here. Like each university has a Fulbright committee on their campus to help our students apply and to like encourage that. When I applied myself, I applied through the University of Louisville in Kentucky, Louisville, and the person that kind of ran that committee is one of the best in the United States. So I was lucky. I don't know how special I am, but the person who runs the Fulbright committee over at the University of Louisville is very frequently she's mentioned in as it's one of the top universities in America that sends students abroad through Fulbright. They get more students than a lot of other universities. This shows you how competitive it is. They send about 15, like that's considered a lot. And that's out of thousands of students on campus, and maybe like at Louisville, like 30 maybe would apply for the year. At Memphis, we have less. We send like 1 or 2 through Memphis. We have a lot less students who apply, and we need to encourage more. And another thing about how competitive it is with Fulbright, being Fulbright really wants to send students from all over different parts of the United States. The United States is a very diverse country with every region is fairly different than the other, and a lot of perspective, a lot of sense. And they students from Memphis and like students from Louisville will get maybe like preferential treatment, because if you're applying from Harvard or these very famous universities, those students tend to come from very wealthy families. They have means to travel on their own if they wanted to. So that if you're at Harvard, it's almost a disadvantage to apply through Fulbright. So it's like an advantage if you're applying through like Memphis or Louisville, places like this that aren't so famous. They're good universities, very, very good research universities. But Fulbright really tries to get different geographical regions representative, very different types of universities: small, large, medium, private, public. There's a lot of things that don't.
The poorer you are, the more chances for you to win the Fulbright Scholarship.
Maybe. Yeah, because they do want to give students who would not otherwise have the chance to go abroad and do this experience, some sort of international experience, that opportunity. And it's not just poor. It could be. It's for a lot of cultural reasons. There's different parts of the United States where international travel is not the norm, right? It's more the exception. And Fulbright and universities like Memphis, we try to encourage that. We try to encourage students who might not otherwise have even thought about doing something like this for a year, teaching or studying, doing a research project abroad. There's a lot of different things.
Mm-hmm. All right. So what were you allowed and not allowed to do during the Fulbright Scholarship? Is it a strict program? Did you have to report to hand in some reports?
Yeah, so we were trained by the U.S. Embassy when we arrived there in Kiev, and gave an orientation, a couple-day orientation program. And they were not allowed. Fulbright participants who are in different countries are not allowed to really interfere politically. That's one thing. We can't go and start we can't be political activists. We can't encourage people to rebel or protest or whatnot. We can have discussions, and talk about our ideas and our opinions. That's perfectly fine. We just more or less cannot be activists while we're there. But from an academic standpoint, we could definitely talk about pretty much anything we want to. What else? That was the main thing. I think another part of the Fulbright was we were not allowed to leave. Like if I was in Ukraine, you're not supposed to leave Ukraine for more than a couple weeks. So because they want you in the country where where you applied in your project or your teaching assignments are.
At the very beginning, or like from the beginning till end?
Beginning to end. You can leave, but you just can't stay away for too long. You can go for a week or two and visit Russia or Poland or someplace like that, but you can't just be away for months and months at a time because they want you in the place you're supposed to be.
Not strict requirements, it seems to me. Yes.
Yeah, it's not terribly strict.
Yeah.
Say that again.
It's pretty vague, like recommendations, probably not even requirements. Yes.
Yeah, it's flexible. We did have to give a report. You mentioned that. That's at the end. It is fairly flexible. One way Fulbright puts it is like it's not one program, it's like 230 programs because each country is a little different on what they're looking for and to be there and what kind of background, like as far as like your like professional background and things like that. But yeah, it's and Fulbrighters coming from America at least, they basically almost create their own program or more or less, especially if you're doing the research one. You can kind of you when you apply, you have to like outline what you're going to do. And that can change when you get there. I knew a lot of other research Fulbrighters who are in Ukraine who would change their project or a little bit, or they even would like change their city. You know, some were started in Kiev, and then while they were in Kiev, they learned something about maybe Odessa, you know, like something about the art or whatever down there, and they would move to Odessa for a while or and things like that. My program was a little more focused. Because it was the teaching placement, so I was assigned to Vasil-Sefnik Prekarpathian University there in Ivano-Frankivsk, and then like I was assigned to the English department with your sister and some other people, and then at that point though it's more of like me and the faculty figuring out what I'm going to do, right? So it's pretty flexible there. I was like, how can I be useful to that department, you know, while I'm there? And so it's flexible in that sense. But it could be completely different for somebody going to another university or country. Because I talked to other Fulbrighters who were in other places, and they had a completely different experience than I did in Ivano-Frankivsk. Maybe they were at a high school. Maybe they were at a library, not a school. Maybe their department wasn't very helpful, or they were helpful in different ways, or whatnot. So, yeah, it can be flexible.
Mm-hmm. So, talking about Ukraine, could you please name 3 things you liked about Ukraine and you disliked about Ukraine? Yes, because like I know that a lot of people avoid this question, like about disliked about Ukraine. Yeah? Please be honest and speak your mind. You can say whatever you want.
Okay, I'll give you 3 things I liked and 1 thing I didn't like. So the food, I really liked the food. I like the dumplings with the cabbage. Remind me of the name of the dumplings.
Dumplings, vareniki.
Yeah, vareniki. With the cabbage. I love those cabbage vareniki.
With the cabbage, yes, like cabbage rolls. I mean, yes.
I did like the holopsi too, the stuffed cabbage with the rice and vegetables.
I know that Americans pretty detest this holobet.
What's that?
Jelly meat, you know, meat jelly or jelly meat. I don't know. Like, did you like this?
I didn't like that too much, but I did overall. I loved the food. I thought the food was great. The borscht too I loved it. I don't think I had ever tried borscht until I came to Ukraine. I loved the Carpathian Mountains. I love because in Ivano-Frankivsk it's fairly close to the Carpathian Mountains. So I love hiking over there and skiing. With great skiing over there. Oh yeah, Bukovel, great skiing. And then just learning about the general history of Ukraine, the history of Western Ukraine, I thought was very interesting. The people who live around the mountains, and then just how the overall history of the different regions of Ukraine and how Ukraine fit in the Soviet Union, and then after the Soviet Union, because I'm a history buff. I love learning about history. And then the one thing I did not like about Ukraine, and it was more of like I got annoyed. I don't know if this is true or if it was just happened to be circumstantial for me, but like sometimes I would be in line, like maybe buying a bus ticket or a train ticket or buying something a shop or market, and people would cut in front of me. Like I would be like in America, you stand in line, you wait your turn, but in Ukraine, people would just walk in front of me and what we call cut in line.
Really?
Yeah.
Maybe they were handicapped, or they had some particular reasons for doing that, or they have some e-tickets. But e-tickets it couldn't be because it was long ago. But of course,
e-tickets.
It's not really common for Ukraine, because I would hit that person. Me. It's pretty strange. I thought that you would mention something else, yeah? But it's not a common feature. I would say that lines are pretty strict nowadays. I don't know.
Maybe I thought, because I've done some traveling, and maybe I wasn't like in America. We have personal space. Like we prefer being far from people. Like we don't get close up.
Like
yeah. And maybe I was standing too far from the person in front of me.
Yes,
so
maybe.
So that was one of the biggest like cultural things that I found annoying. But it might have been my fault because I didn't stand close enough to. But overall, I there's not much I did not like while I was in Ukraine. I found the people that I got to know very friendly and helpful to me, and I don't have a lot that I tried to take everything as an experience, a learning experience. So I didn't dislike a lot of things while I was there.
I know that in the UAE, for example, some locals can go in front of you, because it's kind of tradition, because they are locals and they are allowed to do everything. But in Ukraine, it's pretty strict. Maybe you were looking like American, and American, we can just take advantage of him. It's all kidding apart. It's pretty strange. Maybe the distance was pretty long. Yes, and they thought that you were not in the line.
Yeah, I think I think that might be the case. That's what happened. So.
And the other two, Holodets, and one more.
Yes, the Holodets and the maybe the smoke and the cigarette smoke in the restaurants.
Oh, so you were long ago in Ukraine. It's after you left, everything has changed.
Okay, good.
Smoking is forbidden nowadays, since has been forbidden since 2011, since you left. Yes, it was unbelievable. Like,
good to hear.
Yeah. And then I didn't visit any restaurants, because I got used to the smoke, and it was like a kind of atmosphere, that you are in the restaurant. So after that, it's just not interesting. And that's it, or something else?
That's it.
Vodka is okay, but smoking is not good. All right. So what about Ukrainian girls? Because everybody is talking about, all internationals, all from different countries. International men are talking about Ukrainian girls. From your perspective, did you like Ukrainian girls? And if yes, why? If you know, why not?
Yeah. Well, all of my students at the university were, except for I had one male, one boy, and all 40 or 50 of the other students were female. So, I really liked my students, and I really, really enjoyed them, and they were always very helpful for me, and my colleagues too. In the department, there were a lot of women, but yeah, I mean, sure, the Ukrainian girls and women were very nice to me. I loved my students, and found them very helpful and very pleasant.
Mm-hmm. So, what would you change in Ukrainian higher education? So, you work in Ukraine, or you just had the program, but still it's kind of work. And you changed probably something, maybe you noticed some disadvantages in Ukrainian higher education. What would you change?
That is hard to say because I didn't do a thorough study of the Ukrainian higher education system. I became fairly familiar with it in a very general sense, but I didn't do a deep dive in the system there. I do know that they had signed, but when I was there about 10 years ago, they had recently, and they were trying to implement the Bologna Accords, where they were trying to become a little more like Europe, and rather than like moving away from the Soviet style, I guess, and trying to be move toward the more European, maybe even American style system. And you know, doing a big transition like that is not easy, but you know, I think everybody who was involved with that I encountered was doing a good job and doing the best they could. The one thing I don't know, it's hard to really make a specific recommendation. One thing I can just point out one thing that's different than that I found I was kind of surprised by when I was in the classrooms was I guess the formality is a little different. Like I found I don't know if I would change this. You know, it doesn't bother me, and I don't think it's bad. But it's the formality of like when I was teaching a class, the students would stand and wait for me to tell them to sit down, and I was a little surprised. What's going on here? And then the students would dress up very nicely. Where in America, the students come in pajamas, and but again, I wouldn't change that. I just thought that's just a difference that I noticed on like kind of the day-to-day level type of thing. But
would you like to come in pajamas?
Yeah, so I would recommend that Ukrainian university students show up to class in pajamas. No.
There is a pajama party, by the way. We have a pajama party, but it's probably once a year. Embroidery party, by the way, when we come in embroideries, there's like a lot of change. There are a lot of changes in Ukraine. So come to Ukraine again. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm curious because everything I'm talking about is like over 10 years ago. So I definitely want to come visit and see the differences. And you know, when I was talking about the Bologna process, I'm curious of the progress with that. You know, what's it looking like these days, and some other things. Yeah,
it's getting tougher and tougher. I guess like the requirements for like admission exams, I would say, that are really tough. And to get an like docent, I mean like associate professor, is unbelievably tough. I would say that they made a lot of innovations, but whether they are good or bad, well, maybe they are better, but we need to have higher salaries. Not a requirement, but some like a financial support, because like if you just improve the system and you don't supply, you don't assist professors in terms of finances, it's just like good for nothing, you know.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. And if we talk about Japan, could you tell us the same, like 3 things you liked and 3 things you disliked about Japan.
Yeah, with Japan, I loved the art and design of a lot of aspects of Japanese, paintings, and also the design of like their green space, like their parks and big parks, small parks. They were always so pleasant. They had that kind of Buddhist feel to it, that distinct Japanese style. And then with the paintings and the art, I find it very interesting, and like it's flat with a lot of heavy lines. This is very art nerd, but like flat, it's not very in depth, but it's like just the composition, the color, and the lines are great. Very simple, right? I love that aspect of their art. They have another thing about Japan is their mix of traditional and modern. Like they're super modern with technology and the cities and the transportation, and then you have in there the mix of like traditional Japanese culture and history mixed in very nicely and seamlessly. And then the people were very polite and very helpful. And I found it easy to get around as an American. The public transportation is very modern. Actually, Tokyo is a massive city. It's the biggest city I've ever been to. But the subway, the underground, I actually found it fairly simple and easy to use. And everything, lucky for me, everything's in English and Japanese in the cities. And I went to a Japanese baseball game. I know baseball isn't very popular in Ukraine, but it's very popular in America and in Japan. And it was just a very different experience going to an American baseball game. A lot of singing, a lot of dancing, a lot of I don't know. It was just like a party. Where in America, a baseball game's very like. I don't normally love baseball. I'm not a big baseball fan. I like basketball and football, but America, I found baseball in America kind of boring. But in Japan, it was very like exciting, and like there's just a huge show to it. Now and then, one thing
like a cognitive dissonance. You had a cognitive dissonance, yeah?
yeah. One thing I did that you asked what I don't like about Japan. One thing I'm a vegan diet. I don't eat meat or dairy anymore for health reasons and some other reasons. And this is after I left Ukraine. So when I was in Ukraine, I was eating meat, but now I don't. I haven't ate meat in about 6 years. But in Japan, I found it difficult to find vegetarian-friendly food or vegan-friendly food where there's because they eat a lot of fish and fish oils, and fish is in a lot of their food. So it was a challenge to find vegan food in Japan, and I was kind of surprised by that. Except for
you are a vegan, yeah? You are a vegan. I see.
Vegan diet. And Kyoto, Japan is a very Buddhist. It's like it's like cultural capital of Japan, very Buddhist, lots of temples. Kyoto was very vegan friendly, but in Tokyo and Hiroshima, those are the two other places I visited. It was a challenge finding good vegan food, but there was some great vegan food in Kyoto. But we spent most of our time in Tokyo, and it was fairly challenging to find good vegan food in Tokyo.
So, like surprising.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about something that you disliked about Japan? On everything you liked.
That was it. I mean, that was the biggest thing, was the food situation for me personally. Again, there's not much I don't anywhere I ever travel, I don't dislike a lot of, there's not a lot I dislike. I think the more you travel, the more you just kind of take anything in as an experience. Even if it's like unpleasant, you kind of take it as a learning experience. If you go in with an open mind and you know, not a lot's going to displease you. You know, you have low expectations but high standards, and you know, you just take everything as it comes. So I don't have a lot of negative experiences when I travel, to be honest. So.
So what differences in terms of culture did you notice between Ukrainians and Americans? And then between Americans and Japanese?
So yeah, looking at Ukrainians, Americans, and Japanese, the biggest difference that comes to mind for me is how direct people are when they talk to you, when you're talking with somebody, having a conversation. I find the Ukrainians the most direct people I've ever interacted with. They're very direct, very blunt. They tell you honestly, boom, straight faced. This is how it is. This is what I think.
Why shouldn't we be direct? Yeah, I mean,
I'm not saying you shouldn't. I'm just saying that's the difference.
We are honest. Yeah.
Americans are a little less direct than Ukrainians.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah, you've been here, so you kind of know how we.
100%. Yeah.
And then, but the Japanese, I find even less direct. They're very polite. There's a lot of etiquette involved in your interactions with people in Japan, and they're very, very polite to, especially I think foreigners. I think they're going to be, you know, they're the least direct. So it kind of goes in a continuum. The most direct is Ukrainians. The kind of the middle is the Americans, and then the least direct that I've encountered are the Japanese. They're very polite, and you don't always know exactly what's on their mind all the time. You have to kind of, it takes a lot of work to get to that point. in a conversation, an interaction, it takes some time and some work when interacting with Japanese people to know exactly what's on their mind.
Such a question. What do you think of political correctness, and do you think that it's a positive phenomenon? Because as far as I understood, there is the level of political correctness is getting higher and higher in the Ukrainian society. So is it beneficial, or it has some drawbacks?
Yeah, I think with political correctness, and there's a big, in America right now, this is kind of like a big social issue too. People are politicians and political reporters and commentators are talking about this a lot in America as well. I think with anything like political correctness or anything else, it's just a matter of taking it too far. So I think political correctness, there's some positive things about being fairly political correct, and just trying, I mean, to me, the good things about political correctness is like taking into account everybody's situation and everybody's background, and not dismissing it, you know, and respecting everybody's perspective and everybody's background and history and where they come from and things like that, and their lifestyle, you know, accepting of lifestyles and things like that. Whereas if it goes too far, it can be more of like a moral panic or you know.
But don't you think straightforwardness works? When the more honest you are to a child, for example, the better he is. Because if you don't tell him like honestly that it's something wrong, like he will think, okay, like maybe it's not, maybe it's not, it isn't wrong. So from my perspective, like this tough love works.
To each their own. But yeah, I don't know. That's a difficult question because I think it's just a matter of political correctness is good for up to a point, but then if it goes too far, then it can be negative. It can have a negative aspect. But it's.
But when political correctness goes too far, it can be also negative. Yeah.
Yes.
So there are two sides of a medal. Yes.
With
the prefix over, when it's something over, with it's just like exaggeration, too much political correctness, like to restrain yourself not to say something wrong. Yes, it's a kind of fierce and unbelievable. And on Facebook, I cannot post like a swear word, such.
That's different, yeah.
Or on YouTube, the policy is getting stricter in this case. Some specific words are not preferable. Like on YouTube, you have to cut something. On Facebook, you have to cut something. Like in terms of blogging, yeah. So I feel it. Yeah, I feel it more and more, and as far as I know, you are fond of politics a lot. Yes. So, what three new words appeared in the English language after the latest American presidential elections?
Yeah, there's some words. Well, there's a few words and phrases that have become more common or more well known with the election and the last few years. It's been a very divisive time in the United States, politically speaking. But one word that comes to mind that's more common is malarkey. Malarkey. It's sort of it's a
higher blending. It's a kind of blending or what? A blending word.
Malarkey means like if something is malarkey, it's like not true. It's like a folk idiom on like if something's you've heard of like full of crap. Like or it can mean like wrong, like something's wrong. So if something's malarkey, it's like not right or it's wrong. Or it's untrue.
Brand new word, malarkey. Yes.
It's not new. It's actually probably a very old word. It's like kind of an old-fashioned word that went out of fashion, and but President Joe Biden uses it a lot.
Resurrect this word. Yes. I see.
And alternative facts. That's a phrase. Alternative facts. This is after the 2016 election when Donald Trump became president. There were a lot of things that were like that his administration would say, and which were provably false. And reporters would ask them about this, and they said, "Well, the reporter would say the fact is this," and they said, "Well, we have our alternative fact." So it's a very postmodern idea. It's like your facts are different from my facts, which that's true up to a sense. But they were referring to a lot of things that most are plainly not true, but they still would say, well, to us it is.
Oxymoron, yes, the connection of unconnected things. Like
sometimes.
Alternative facts.
Alternative facts. And then the third phrase that came up this last election was "stop the steal." So that's been when President Trump lost the election, he has claimed that it was stolen, like that there was voter fraud, which was been proven false. They've never been able to produce any kind of hard evidence at all. But they say stop the steal. Like, after the election was over and before Joe Biden became president, there's this 2-month period. And during those 2 months, President Trump would say, stop the steal, stop the steal. And like all of his supporters and his fellow politicians on his party were telling everybody to stop the steal. So they were going to overturn and change the results. And that's what their rally cry was, like they were saying and yelling and on Facebook. And so that was a phrase that's become like kind of well known with stop the steal.
Why did I ask you such a question? Because it's strange, but I remember while we were playing billiards, I remember that you told me the phrase, the collocation, the political collocation, Kremlin the Gremlin. And I remembered it so much that, wow, it's like Jonathan probably are into politics. So I should ask him some more questions about this. Was it you who told me this collocation, Kremlin the Gremlin? Yeah.
Say that again. What?
Kremlin the Gremlin. Kremlin the Gremlin. Probably it was like maybe 10 years ago, but you told me this phrase, this collocation, Kremlin, like Kremlin in Moscow, the Gremlin.
I don't think that was me.
No, I am teaching you.
Maybe, but I don't. I do remember playing billiards with you, but I don't remember saying the Kremlin, the Gremlin. I don't remember ever hearing that or saying that. I might have, but
sure, yeah. Don't be afraid, Jonathan. Nothing will happen with the Kremlin.
Yeah, no poison, please, no. No, I don't remember, but yeah, it's possible.
No, but a lot of years has passed since that time. It's no wonder. So, did you listen to Joseph Biden's inaugural speech, and did Americans like it? And what did they say after it? The point is, I'm writing an article, the academic article about it, and I'm almost done. And so, what can you say? Were you impressed by your president's inaugural speech?
Yeah, I personally I liked it a lot. For me, it was nice that he didn't because it's such a contrast between President Trump and Joseph Biden. Really has tried not to pit one group of Americans against the other. He really tried to talk about unity, and President Trump, almost every time he spoke publicly, would find a group or a person to malign or, to attack. And, Joe Biden that's not his style. And he's been around for a long time. And he's hit. Let me give you a suggestion. You should also look at Joe Biden's old speeches, or maybe not his speeches, but his interactions. Because he is known to speak his mind, and he's also known to be politically incorrect. So you were talking about politically correctness. He would make little. And what they call them, what's the word I'm looking for? Gaffe, Gaffe. He is famous for being a gaffe machine. But the definition of a gaffe is telling the truth.
Straight shooter.
Yeah, but gaffes are politically incorrect phrases, but they are that aren't might offend some people, but it's straight shooter, right? But anyway, the inaugural speech, I thought was one of his best speeches I've heard him do. It was emotional, talked about unity, but I thought also did a good job laying out his plan for the COVID pandemic, because he would lay out some specific things that he wanted everybody in the United States to consider and do. So I thought he did a good job, like doing unity and talking about the crisis, the pandemic crisis, and some things that he was going to do and try to do and ask the American people to do. And that's another thing that I think he is a contrast with President Trump. Is he asks American people to do difficult things, and to like be responsible and be not just think about yourself, but think about other people around you. So I thought he did a good job with that as well.
Yeah, I noticed that. So, and the last question, Jonathan. So, could you please name 3 things people should do to succeed in the Fulbright Scholarship and achieve so much as you did?
Yeah, so a good place to get started if you're interested in applying for a Fulbright is to go to the Fulbright Ukraine website. Maybe you could post that in the comments after we're done, but there is a Fulbright Commission there in Kiev. And if that's where you would apply through, if you're applying for a Fulbright, is to they have resources on their website, and you can see the programs. There's different programs you can apply for, the application requirements, and then some like they give like specific advice, because you're going to write essays or project proposals, so they'll give outlines for those there. If there are any Fulbright people in your community, or maybe even in Kiev, they could maybe help you out and read your essays and things like that, and give you tips and advice on some things to change in your essays. I say this to my students and all the time. A good skill is just to seek help, seek support from the resources that are available to you. Even just your professors, your faculty, your teachers, even if they weren't Fulbright, just getting their feedback and having them look over your essays and helping you with that is a lot of different people to give you that feedback.
I know one girl who applied for the Fulbright scholarship 7 times, and she failed. And I told her, "Come on, girl, stop doing that," because probably she was in the semifinal several times, and she is so persistent. Stop doing this. Maybe something is wrong. Maybe something is wrong in that from that side. Maybe you don't know a lot.
One other thing, when I was a Fulbright, I would talk with the director of Fulbright in Ukraine. We would travel and do some things together. He's no longer there, but one thing he told me was important for Ukrainians, especially the scholars, the faculty who are applying. Your project, your proposal should be something that you can only do in the United States, or maybe a specific, there's like a university in America that has these archives, or this something they're working on, and that you can only access there, or there's something about that community that you're studying, this group of people. It cannot be something that you can also do while you're in Ukraine. He said a lot of the applicants who would not get Fulbrights in Ukraine, the thing that they were doing, they could do there. So it's got to be something that makes sense to do, that you can pretty much only do while in America, something that you could not replicate if you were in Ukraine. And, you just got to get creative on how to do that. And another important thing is, what will you bring to the United States? What are you going to teach us when you come here? And what are you going to take back with you? to Ukraine. So one of the goals both ways is like when I came back to America, I was like, what did I learn and how am I going to share that? And same thing for Ukrainians looking to apply for Fulbright is what are you going to learn there? What are you going to bring back to Ukraine? And how are you going to share that? And for the students who are applying to maybe do a master's degree, look for a master's program that you could not do in Ukraine, right? And what about that program, ties in with your personal career goals? And is there something about that program that you could bring back to Ukraine and improve your community with that knowledge or that expertise that you're going to learn in that program? What about that is unique and it would help you come back to Ukraine and improve your community some way, either through sharing of knowledge or a program that you're going to start or implement when you return, so that's a few important.
The first question is pretty tough, and it's getting more and more complicated, in my opinion, nowadays, because everything that you can have access to, you can do it via the internet, Probably you are a historian. Maybe there are some archives, like you said, that you can get the access to. But, even to these archives, I think that everything is digitalized and you can have access even to these archives. Don't you think so?
Yeah, that's definitely true. Even more true than 10 years ago when I was talking with the director back then. But, there's still some things that are unique to maybe one specific, like maybe there's something about, here's an example, like something about public health. So if you identify a program in rural Appalachia in the United States, that's like kind of like, that's the mountains in the eastern United States. Maybe there was a program that was successful in bringing public health to a rural mountain community. You go there, you learn about that, and you bring that back to Ukraine and implement that, and tweak it, adjust it to the local circumstances, but take the basis of that and transplant it back to Ukraine.
We had plenty of students from Ukraine who went to the Appalachians, and there were some American students and American scholars who came to the Carpathians, and we exchanged our mutual program based on these Appalachians. I know two American professors, Donald Davis and Christopher Miller, who worked in the Carpathians and in the Appalachians, and they made the comparative restrictions. Yes, you are right that this topic is pretty hot. They can just continue doing this project. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I remember Christopher Miller. I can't remember, he was either there before or after me, but I remember maybe after.
He came to Ukraine, maybe he was in Ukraine 3 or 4 times even. In 2015, even he came to Ukraine. So,
yeah, and the same applies for the faculty exchange. Remember we were talking about the faculty kind of professional development type of stuff. Think about that. Like what about the American way of things or a particular university are you going to bring back? What's unique about that, and why can't that be done in Ukraine? And then how are you going to, when you bring it back, you got to lay out like a good case, a good practical case of implementing it. So it is competitive. You're right. It is competitive, and I've known Fulbrighters who've applied 2-3 times before they were actually given, awarded the Fulbright.
You mean the Americans from the American side? Yeah, they applied. You mean? Yes.
Yeah.
I see. Uh-huh. Okay, okay, Jonathan. Thanks a lot for such an awesome sauce interview. I learned this word awesome sauce from the previous interview. Yeah? I know that you are an extremely active personality, and to wish you all the best in your project, in the Fulbright, in your career growth. You're a cool dude. Thanks a
Thank
lot.
you. Thank you for having me. You're a cool dude too.
All right. So take care. Let's keep in touch and bye bye.
Bye bye.